Wilson Fisk, a dangerous, corrupt man who has power and connections everywhere, and who is a villain who thrives on the evil acts of the underworld of New York City, and who is unironically in a position of power over the very city, and is now Mayor Wilson Fisk. And as mayor, one of the first things he does is outlaw all vigilantes, in which he likes to call it the Powers Act, basically meaning he outlawed any unsanctioned superhero activity or power usage, with him further explaining, effective immediately, any individual who exhibits a use of powers deemed superhuman or commits acts of destructive vigilantism will be charged as a threat, sending a wide message to the whole superhero community living in New York, which in the Marvel universe is like 95% of heroes. We then see some people's reactions to this information, such as Tony Stark, saying how he has been down this road before, and how superheroes serve a purpose, and have not only saved New York, but the world many times over. Or even Storm, with the response from the mutants, saying how Krakoa, the home of the mutants, have no interest in human laws, and how they have diplomatic immunity and will not conform to any laws they set. But unfortunately, the arrests start to begin, as we see Moon Knight, one of their first targets, getting ganged up on by the Thunderbolt units, who, as the name suggests, are a unit of Thunderbolt-sponsored soldiers, and even some supervillains. And as Moon Knight finishes beating up the normal units, we see a Thunderbolts team come in, consisting of Rhino, US Agent, Agony, a female symbiote, and a daughter of Electro. And together they rush Moon Knight and bring him down. On the same front, we cut over to Spider-Man, specifically Miles Morales, who is saving children from a burning building, something that the local firefighters without him were not going to be able to do. And as he lands with the last saved child, he stops to catch his breath from all of the smoke. And unfortunately, the Thunderbolt unit arrives to bring him in for unsanctioned superhuman abilities and activity, tasing or electrocuting him with some kind of weapon. And you would think, as someone with an ability to absorb electricity or energy, this wouldn't be as debilitating, but I digress. Anyways, we see Captain America also helping, and as the unit try to place him under arrest too, Captain America refutes this, saying, "I know you're just doing your jobs, but he just saved lives. And if a law needs to be broken in order to save lives, I'll do it every time." And as one of the soldiers go to try and rip Miles' mask off, Captain America steps in and throws his shield, initiating the battle. But as more units arrive as reinforcements, we see the superheroes get reinforcements in the form of Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Elektra. And as they take down the other foot soldiers, they see helicopters and other reinforcements start to arrive, so they decide to book it and escape. Moving over, we see at the Baxter Building, or home of the Fantastic Four, even the esteemed superhero family aren't immune to this, as we see government officials storm the building with a warrant to seize any so-called dangerous weapons or technology that might be harboring there. But as Mr. Fantastic tries to explain that they have an arrangement with the government to work unobstructed, tentacles seem to form behind him and put collars on him and Sue Storm. Collars that seem to negate any powers metahumans might have, power dampeners. And the culprit who put them on them is none other than Dr. Octavius, who is working with Fisk for his own nefarious goals. But before they can be captured, Sue Storm presses something on the computer, alerting the rest of the Fantastic Four and their children. And as more units start to rush the building and get to where they are, they decide to flee and escape with the children, jumping out of a window and onto a vehicle as they fly off. And there's even more instances of this happening, with Luke Cage and Jessica Jones fighting their own battles, etc. And unfortunately for the heroes, they go from detaining any person who uses their abilities to actively seeking them out. Starting with Spider-Man, who at this time is Ben Reilly and not Peter Parker. And if you don't know, Ben Reilly is a clone of Peter Parker from the Clone Saga, which we don't talk about. But with him as a current Spider-Man now, with a slightly altered costume and being identical to Peter in every way except mentality and personality, he is acting in as a main Spider-Man while Peter is off away. And it seems they are trying to lure Spider-Man in at the Daily Bugle, where someone has called for Spider-Man after taking hostages there, maybe even figuring out that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. But Ben Reilly has no choice but to go in and see what's going on. And as he gets there, he sees two villains, Taskmaster and Whiplash. And normally if this was a 2-on-1, Spider-Man will have the advantage. But unfortunately, as villains do, they don't play fair, as Whiplash has hostages and his whips around their necks, and by Spider-Man's own words, with enough electricity current to kill them instantly. So Spider-Man has to play this really carefully. And with Taskmaster being the first one to speak up, saying, "Let's get this party started, yeah? It ain't personal, Spidey. See, the guy who hired me has a file on you, but it's incomplete, and he hates that. So my job is to find out who Spider-Man really is. He also gave me these toys," as he then brandishes some electrical gloves, while further saying, "The file says, based on your current comings and goings, whoever is under that mask probably works here at the Daily Bugle. So I figured, draw you here for maybe a not so fair fight with perfect hostages, and then figure out who this Spider-Man really is before charging to Spider-Man as they engage in a battle. And as they begin to fight, Spider-Man then monologues to himself that Taskmaster is the best in the world in hand-to-hand combat, and he's trapped inside in close quarters fighting with him. Not even to mention that if he does anything they don't like, Whiplash will kill the hostages. So Spider-Man decides to play dirty himself and attack Whiplash's ego and taunting him, saying, "I thought you wanted to be an A-list. Weird that you're cool with watching someone else kill Spider-Man." In which he is actually successful in taunting him as Whiplash walks away from the hostages and charges at Spider-Man. And in a double-edged sword play here, Spider-Man is able to one-hit knock out Whiplash, but not before Whiplash being able to completely wrap Spider-Man within his tendrils, shocking him, which also serves as a good durability feat, as those same currents were stated to be able to kill normal people instantly. But after taking out Whiplash, Spider-Man then says his muscles are seizing from the electricity. He can't move the same way he could. And as Taskmaster draws close, Spider-Man then says, "Alright Taskmaster, care to take this outside?" And with Taskmaster walking up, putting a power dampening collar on him and saying, "That's a great idea," before literally kicking him out of a window of the Daily Bugle, in which normally Spider-Man could probably survive a fall like this, but now being powerless and hurt, there's no way if connected, he would just walk it off. And with him trying to find a way to slow his fall, he uses the only asset he has right now, his web shooters. But with any normal person trying to do this, he instantly dislocates his shoulder and continues to fall. And in another good feat of durability, after slowing down his dust engine a little bit, he crashes straight down into a car. But he is able to survive this, but not before being taken by more units who just arrived to pit him into custody. Moreover, we see Spider-Man in custody, now unmasked as Ben Reilly. But lucky for him, they don't know who he is. As one of the other cops bring up, why don't they just fingerprint him? But some of the officers there think he's a hero and won't process him. So even though he's unmasked, they don't know his true identity. And as they are in the middle of interrogating him, trying to get his identity, one of the officers gets a call saying that there's a disturbance out in the lobby for them. And as it turns out, it's none other than the Thing and the Human Torch, who come to rescue a fellow hero in need, before literally breaking down the wall and carrying Spider-Man out to seek medical attention. Moving over to the next panel, we see Kingpin talking to a mysterious individual, someone none other than Purple Man, who, if you don't know, the Purple Man has a certain ability which allows him to control or command people using the pheromones his body produces. And Kingpin has him locked up and has been using him to alter the mind and affect the voters to elect him as mayor, using Purple Man's abilities. As in the crystal of his cane is a finger of the Purple Man, which basically acts like a genie of sorts. So whenever he utters a command, anyone in the vicinity near would be forced to follow it. And after finding out we can even restore memories locked away inside of his head, Wilson Fisk uses it, simply saying "remember" as he's on top of Fisk's tower. And as he does, two words come to his mind: Matt Murdock, the secret identity of Daredevil, which Daredevil tried his best to wipe that information from all of his enemies' minds. But unfortunately for him, Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, some who would consider him Daredevil's greatest opponent and arch nemesis, now has one of his greatest secrets: his identity.